Hey folks, welcome back. I want to hop on here today and talk about some of my struggles with anxiety. And what better place to start from than the beginning?
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine.
So, I mentioned in one of my previous videos that I struggled with anxiety for probably 3 years or so. I still struggle with it off and on here recently in life, but it's not as much. It's very sporadic now. But anyways, it all really started in 2020 when COVID happened. I started dating this girl in December of 2019. We were in grade 11. And COVID obviously started in March, or it started in March here when the place went into lockdown and stuff like that. So I was 16 years old at the time, and so was she. And I remember thinking when COVID first started making like the news and stuff, I remember thinking to myself, like, I can handle it like no problem, you know what I mean? Like I'm chilling, I'm fine. Because at that point in my life, that before the summer of 2019, I was like in a very good headspace mentally. I was doing really well, and not that I hadn't been prior, but I was just really calm all the time. And I don't really know entirely why, but it definitely had something to do with the fact that, you know, I felt like I had a solid friend group, and I was sort of blossoming this relationship with this girl that summer, even though she was in another relationship at the time. But I'd be down around her way all the time. I'd be down hanging out with them a lot, her and a bunch of my buddies. So I felt like I had a solid friend group, and I was working, so I was getting money. I just had everything taken care of, I guess, you know. And I was super calm that summer. I remember specifically that was probably the healthiest mental space I've been in, I guess, in my whole life, you know. It was me and my buddies just used to go out at night, just patrol the streets at night, and just stare up at the moon and listen to like Pink Floyd and stuff, you know. Some like psychedelic shit. Anyways, I remember being really calm that summer, and when COVID started making the news in January of 2020, I remember thinking, like, man, I'm chilling. Like, you know, I've been doing really well. Like, this is gonna be no problem. I'm gonna be like stuck indoors for like a couple months maybe. That just gives me more time to play like video games and stuff. Like, I'll be all right. And that was obviously the furthest possible thing from the truth. COVID was the hardest point. COVID was the hardest point in my life by like a landslide. And honestly, a lot of that had to do with the relationship I was in. The girl I entered into a relationship with, she had gone through some things earlier that year, or earlier in 2019, and went through her childhood and stuff, and she was dealing with it all by herself, and I don't blame her for putting any of it on me. I mean, we're two 16-year-olds. We don't know what we're doing, right? I definitely used to, especially after we first broke up a couple of years ago, or a few years ago. But I don't now. We're two 16-year-olds, and she had some bad things happen to her, and she had been dealing with it all by herself up until that point. And so unfortunately, she burdened me with a lot of it. I was not equipped to handle everything that she had gone through by myself. It was like I was a therapist and a boyfriend, like, all at the same time. Like, I was carrying the burden of being the only one who knew about it, and also at the time I felt like I was the only one that could possibly help her, which as a 16-year-old dealing with some pretty serious and, I guess, complex trauma from her end. I wasn't a therapist. I'm not a therapist, you know what I mean? I didn't know what I was doing. I was trying to help her in any way possible. And respect for her, obviously, I'm not going to detail what those things were, but they weren't good. But that's kind of where my anxiety started. I mean, and aside from even COVID. I remember, I don't remember this, but I remember something about it. But my mother told me I guess, when was that? That was a couple years ago now. It was after COVID had really started. It had started to die off at this point, and she had told me that she had known I was struggling mentally. She told me, she's like, "Do you remember when you were like scared for us to go to the house because of COVID?" Like, and for context, I'm diabetic, and there's this whole like uproar at the time that like people with pre-existing medical conditions were at like a significant risk for death because of COVID. And I was 16 years old, but I had diabetes, so that was like it was or I still have diabetes, but I was at the forefront of my mind. Like, I was, I guess I was scared all the time for them to leave. I remember this one moment. I remember something about this. This is kind of how I remember it. I remember she had to go get gas or something, and I was just scared. I was so scared, and I think I had to make her and my father wear these, like, I guess this latex gloves or whatever. Wear latex gloves, sanitize before using the pump, sanitize after, wear the face mask, do what we thought was appropriate at the time. And I was kind of like, I pretty much made them do it, and they were, I guess, willing to do it anyways, and they were going to do it anyways, but I just remember being scared of COVID because I was scared if I got it, I would die. So there was that. I was dealing with, I guess, generally being scared of this like thing that could possibly end my life short. As a 16-year-old, you don't really feel like you lived a lot. So I was dealing with that at the same time, and I guess on top of the COVID thing, I was also dealing with my relationship and my girlfriend, who was. So the 3 or 4 months we had been dating prior, I hadn't known really about all of her I guess, trauma. And there were a few red flags, I guess, early on in the relationship that there might have been something going on, but I'm a 16-year-old kid. Like, I don't know to look at these things, right? So I kind of just ignored that. And once COVID hit and we hit isolation, so like obviously me and her are apart for a while, then these things start getting dumped on me, and it's a lot. And it's especially a lot because I'm the only one who knows about it, and I'm the only one that can really do anything about it because she's the only one I'm willing to tell. So I'm the only one that can help her, and I guess in some way, or at least that's how it felt to me at the time. And I remember just doing anything I could to help her. Like, I was on the internet all the time trying to find like possible remedies for the things she was going through, and they weren't physical ailments. I shouldn't say that. They were all mental, but just like I guess something to help her. And I tried, and I couldn't, obviously. I was like 16-year-old, right? I'm a 16-year-old kid. What do I know? So I was dealing with this. I was dealing with her, like, blowing up my phone 24/7. Like, I couldn't. The sort of fantasy of me just staying in the house playing video games 24/7 wasn't entirely true, because most of the time I was playing video games with my friends, but I was also always on alert about what my girlfriend would do or say, and it was exhausting. It was hard as a 16-year-old, man. Like, what am I supposed to do? And it doesn't help at the time that I thought I knew everything. I guess to some extent I still do, but especially as a 16-year-old, I'm sure there's some of you that can relate to this. You think you know the world, you think you know it all, and when you're presented with this challenge that you don't really know, your pride takes a hit a little bit, because you don't know this and you don't know how to fix it. And so that was a challenge. I was always on high alert. Like, I was always buzzing, you know what I mean? And I guess she wasn't very, she wasn't really that nice to me. And I don't mean this as disrespect to her, because like I said, I don't blame her. I mean, we're two 16-year-olds. She's going through a bunch of stuff, and yeah, I can't put the blame on her. But she did put me through a lot, aside from even her, I guess, directly from her trauma. She was just like, I felt like I couldn't really hang out with friends a whole lot or really do anything without her. Even messaging her over the course of COVID, of confinement, of lockdown, or whatever you want to call it, if I had to respond within a certain amount of time, or like all hell broke loose. So I remember I tried to stay under 10 minutes. If it was like over 10 minutes, I was starting to tread on thin ice. It was, as soon as like it got past 10 minutes, it was getting a bit long for me to respond. So we were just talking. We were forced to talk, or I was forced to talk to her all day, every day for like the entirety of lockdown, which sounds easy as, you know, a couple, right? But you gotta understand, like, all of my talking to her is dealing with is trying to help her with these things that she's going through, and her just laying it all out to me, like venting. And like I said, I don't blame her for it, because she just wanted someone to talk to. But I was unfortunately not equipped for that level of I guess baggage, even though baggage sounds like a derogatory term, but you know, that level of complexity, that level of trauma, I was not equipped to deal with it. And honestly, I'm still not. And truthfully, those things that I experienced still affect me to this day in my current relationship. So that's basically where it all started. I started feeling the anxiety badly when COVID started, and COVID started here in March of 2020. So, and I felt like that for probably 3 years. When it really started to die down was like the summer and the fall of 2023, and by then me and my ex-girlfriend had been long broken up. We broke up in the fall of 2021, and I really struggled to figure out what was going on with me, because up until that point in my life, I had no idea what anxiety felt like, or I had certainly never felt this type of feeling before. My only type of like nervousness or anxiousness was before, like, you know, sporting events, and I'm pretty sure I brought this up in one of my previous videos. When I had like a big hockey game or something, I'd get like all anxious and worked up about it in a good way. I was looking forward to it, and I was like, I wanted to go, but and my remedy to that was to calm my nerves was just take deep breaths and calm down, and that all worked at that point. But this challenge was new, because, well, when I was playing hockey and stuff and dealing with that sort of feeling every now and then, that is what I associated anxiety to be. That's what I thought anxiety was. And then I started feeling this feeling like it was like my head, like I always had a headache. I was always buzzing. It felt like I was like, I guess, in a daze. It was like my eyes hurt sometimes. My heart was always beating out of my chest. I was kind of trembly sometimes. And once I started feeling this feeling, then it was like, oh, this is what anxiety feels like. But the strange thing was, like, I mean, naturally, you know, when you're, especially in this day and age, when you're going through medical stuff, you're inclined to search it up, even though we all know we probably shouldn't. But I was searching up, like, how to deal with these things and stuff, because the big part of it was my method of dealing with it, which was, in the past, taking deep breaths and sort of calm myself down. That was not working. And whenever I tried to take deep breaths, like in and out and in and out, and starting to like slow my breathing down, for some reason, it almost felt like it got worse. And this perplexed me. I didn't know what to make of it, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. So yeah, like I said, my symptoms was like a a pounding headache pretty much all the time. My heart was beating out of my chest, like chest pain, shortness of breath, and I guess sort of sometimes pain in my eyes, and sometimes I feel like I was in a daze. Like I didn't feel all there because I guess mostly because I was so focused on this feeling that I was having, and I didn't know what to make of it. From all accounts, it felt like anxiety. From everything I searched up, it seemed to be anxiety, but I couldn't seem to shake it no matter what I did. Like I tried breathing, I tried all kinds of stuff. And it's a little tangent. There's an old saying that when you're drowning, you grasp at straws, and it could not be more true. I remember there was one moment. I was sitting outside in my car on lunch break at work, and I was dealing with this feeling. And I was like, I've been awfully negative these past couple of years. Like maybe I just got to be more positive. Maybe I just got to adopt a positive mindset, and my worries will go away. My problems will vanish. And so I tried. I tried for that day. I tried to adopt an overly positive mindset because I was never like, I'm not a pessimistic guy. I was always a pretty optimistic dude. But I tried to just be like overly positive. And a lot of this ties into like just seeing bullshit online, seeing people online talk about like ways they got out of anxiety or whatever. People who aren't really qualified to talk about this stuff, I don't feel like. But anyways, you see all this stuff and you're just like, oh, maybe this is the answer to my problems. And you try and do it and it fails you. And that happened a lot to me. There's a list too long to read of stuff that I tried to do to change my problems, try to fix them, and none of them worked. Like zero. I felt completely out of control when it came to it. So that period of my life, 2020 to the fall of 2021, was a really hard period, especially because of the relationship I was in, unfortunately. And so imagine now I'm dealing with a pretty unfortunate relationship. The relationship taught me a lot, but it was unfortunate circumstance of everything. She was a young girl who was dealing with some hard stuff, and I was not equipped to handle it, and so therefore I started dealing with some hard things because she was just putting it all on me. So I'm dealing with this relationship, and I'm also trying to deal with myself because I'm barely hanging on. Like I'm basically carrying the weight of two people, it feels like, and I'm just I feel like I'm drowning. So I'm dealing with that for a year and a half, and then me and her break up, and not the best way because I sort of just I tell you, I broke up with her over text very briefly. Just sort of like a spur of the moment thing. And that was just because I reached a breaking point and I basically just had a breakdown. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm done.
I just can't do it. I can't take this shit no more, man.
Broke up with her over Snapchat, which wasn't a very classy move by me, but I guess you live, you learn, and I wouldn't do it now. But so that was that. That ended in the fall of 2021. And my struggles persisted for another couple of years till the fall of 2023. And this is what perplexed me, is because I still continued to feel these feelings long after my relationship had ended. And so I was like, well, clearly this wasn't my relationship's doing, even though I felt like part of it was, but there's that sort of juxtaposition of, well, dude, you're not in your relationship now, so why are you still stressed out all the time or like buzzing? And I didn't have an answer. I didn't have an answer to that question, and I pondered it relentlessly for the next few years. And I tried going to counseling. I tried going on 2 separate occasions. I tried going when I was in my previous relationship, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but what was a bad thing is that I tried the counseling while she was in the room, which which prevented me from being totally honest with my counselor. So I couldn't get into some of the stuff I was dealing with my girlfriend because she was in the room with me, and if she knew, then all hell would break loose. So I was reluctant to do that. So I couldn't dive into the stuff I was feeling about, like how I felt like overburdened with these things, and I felt like I was a therapist when I didn't feel equipped to be, and things like that. And I couldn't open up about any of it because, well, she was right next to me on the bed, and I was at my desk. So wasn't a good idea on my part. And the counselor wasn't even, like, I don't know what it takes to be a counselor. I don't know how you even do that. This person was just a social worker. She didn't have any sort of training in counseling. She was just a social worker that sort of claimed to be a counselor for the children's hospital in here. And so I saw her, and that didn't help at all, and probably because I couldn't be completely honest with her. And then once I got to university in the fall of 2021, I'm not sure when I saw this counselor. It was probably the spring of 2022, probably around there. I saw this counselor from the university, I guess from the support system or whatever they got there. I saw her, and she was complete shit. She was horrible, and it wasn't like she was rude or anything. She just didn't know what she was doing. She told me before the counseling session started. She told me, she was like, I have a degree in this, and the rest of the counselors here don't either. We're just kind of here to listen to you guys talk. You know, they're just kind of there to be sort of, I guess, release for all your woes. Someone to burden, I guess, if you will. Someone to put your woes onto. And so I just started, and I was looking for help from her, but she couldn't give me help. She didn't know what she was doing. I started telling her everything. I told her everything I could. And she was just like, yeah, that's crazy. Just like, she was literally like, damn, that's crazy. And she was like, yeah, interesting. I'll run it by some of my colleagues and see what they got to say. I was like, right on. And that was the end of that. That was it. I didn't feel much better after that because she didn't really give me any advice. She's just like, yeah, that's wild. I never heard of that before. I was like, sweet. So my experiences with counselors aren't very good. I was very close to going to therapy a handful of times. But truthfully, most of the reason I didn't was because of how expensive it was. Which sounds silly, but it's the truth. One of the therapists in around town that I was looking at going to was like $220. Like an hour or half an hour, it was something like that. And I was like, I can't afford to pay $220 to go see this missus for an hour, you know? Like, I'll suck it up, I guess. So that's what I tried to do. I mentioned earlier how I still don't really know what happened to me. It just kind of went away. I haven't really dealt with that feeling much at all recently. And to me, it seems like it almost happens for like no reason. Like it's not like I think about something and hyperfixate on it and then start stressing myself out. To me, it seems to just sort of show up. And that was also something that always perplexed me. And I remember I took a university course. I think it was last semester. I took a university course. And in that course, my professor talked about how it takes like 3 years or something for trauma, like a traumatic experience, to quote unquote leave the nervous system, like your nervous system to like really start to calm down. And truth be told, that's like the only lead I have as to what happened to me. I'm not entirely convinced it was just any old anxiety, because if I had like generalized anxiety disorder or just something, if I had anxiety, you would think I'd still be dealing with it. Like, you wouldn't think that just sort of went away without anything changing, but it did. It just kind of left. And so my only theory is that there's some merit to that. And maybe I was so traumatized by, like, maybe the experience of going through COVID and dealing with a less than ideal relationship. Maybe that whole experience was more traumatic than I'm willing to give it credit. And it's also tough to admit that, because, like, I hear stories about people going through, like, some really bad stuff, like rape, or like human trafficking, or like kidnapping and stuff like that. And not necessarily in person, like people I know, even though I have heard some stories. But I hear stories about it, like, online or whatever, or on the news. And I'm like, man, like, that's like traumatic. Like, that's some deep stuff. And I'm here just, like, dealing with a bad relationship and going through a pandemic. And I guess it was more traumatic than I'm willing to give it credit. I have no idea. I guess in hindsight, like, I was dealing with my first really bad relationship of my life. And I was also dealing with one of the worst global pandemics in probably human history. Dealing with that as a person with, like, pre-existing medical conditions, when I'm sort of being told to be scared because I have this pre-existing medical condition. And so I was scared. I was terrified of dying. And I remember that. So I guess it's possible that it was more traumatic than I realized. But I don't know. I don't know anything about these things, and that's essentially where my story ends. I would love to hear your guys' feedback on it, like, if you guys have had any similar experiences, because I certainly felt like in the time, I definitely felt like I was alone, even though I knew there's people going through anxiety and stuff, but, like, I had never heard anybody talk about this specific thing. Like, it just, you can't shake it no matter what you try. Like, I don't know. So I'd love to hear your guys' experience with that, if you have any. Maybe I have my email put in the description below, so maybe you guys can send your own experiences. Maybe if some of you are willing, I could possibly share that in another video. I don't know. I want to talk about it, because it was that whole 3-year period of my life was by far the most life-changing, I guess, traumatic time in my life. Like, it sucked badly, to be honest. And I'm hoping that this can reach somebody who's going through something similar, and it can help somebody out. And I guess to extrapolate, that's kind of my whole goal with this, is to talk about these things and help some people out, because there is some stigma around stuff like this, and I just want to help some people, and in some regard also find answers for myself, because like I said, I don't know what I went through. I have no idea. So if you guys have any knowledge that I'm not aware of, or something, anything at all, if you guys can help me figure out what it was I went through, do let me know. Like I said, my only theory is that it was something traumatic, and that my nervous system, without conscious input, was just so on guard, because I was having to deal with all these things at the same time. And frankly, I couldn't. So that's my theory. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. Let me know in the comments below. And yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Consider subscribing, because I'll be posting stuff like this every Friday. And until next time, people, take care.